Hello, everybody. How are you? This is Donna Lovette, and I am so glad to see you here again today for another Saturday evening. I am really excited about what I have to share with you. Now, what I had asked you to do the last time that we talked was we talked about the value of setting goals. That has to be the first step that you take if you're going to accomplish anything significant. So on last week, I asked you to do three things. One, to close your eyes and to think big, to dream big. If money was no object, what kind of life would you want to have for you and your family? What kind of success do you see yourself achieving? To just dream big. The second thing I asked you to do was out of those dreams to set a goal. We talked about the difference between a dream and a goal, and that you were to determine at least one goal based on your dreams, and to third, determine your why. Why do you want to do that? And your goal was to write it down on a card, on a sheet of paper, or someplace where you can look at your goal every day in the morning and in the evening so you can review your goals on a regular basis. Now, the second thing today I want to talk to you about is the power of making a decision. Because you can set a goal, but if you don't make a hard, concrete, firm, unwavering decision that you're going to achieve that goal, then 2 days from now, 2 years from now, 20 years from now, you'll see that you've accomplished nothing. Making that firm decision is key. And, everybody's going to find challenges. You're going to go through challenges with any goal you set. You're going to make some mistakes in any goal you set. But you have to make that decision that regardless of what happens, you are going to press until you accomplish that particular goal, or whatever it takes kind of mentality. So I want to share with you an example of that. And because I'm making this tape a few weeks before Resurrection Day, I can't think of another example that's a better one than the example of the star who played Jesus in the Passion of Christ. Jim, and I'll probably mispronounce his last name. I'll spell it for you to make sure that I give him credit. Cavezel is his last name. Now, here's the story behind this, and you may have known this, but it's still a best example of doing whatever it takes. So Mel Gibson, who we know, produced the play, called Jim and asked him if he would be willing to star and to play Jesus in the movie. The next day, he called Jim because he was concerned and almost tried to talk him out of it. Did try to talk him out of it. What he said to him was that if you do this movie, you may never work in Hollywood again. You may find that it's difficult for you to ever find another job. It's the consequences. He wanted him to realize that there may be some severe consequences if he said yes to doing this movie. And Jim said that he could feel like a spirit of fear, kind of attack him. He said, because he began to think about his life and, how if he couldn't work again, how that would affect his family and all of the things that he had done prior to that to get to this place in his career. And he gave some thought to it, but this was his response. My talent was given to me by God, not man. So yes, I'm willing to do the movie. Now, what he said in the interview, because I watched him in an interview. What he said was that this movie was birthed in pain, which is a very interesting way to describe his experience. I know that one of the things that he did was he fasted, and to get into the role, and he dislocated his shoulder either at the beginning of the movie or right at the beginning of the movie. Somehow he dislocated his shoulder. So he taped the movie in pain for most of it. He gave this example of pain when in the movie when you saw the time when Jesus was being whipped by the soldiers. And he said what happened is that there's a metal bar that was there. And so whenever the soldiers were really whipping him with this canine tail, this whip that had pieces of glass and bone on the end of it, so that anytime it hit you, it would rip skin. And so they would hit this metal bar so that the whip wasn't really hitting him. It just looked like it was. But then Mel said, I want you to really get into the role, he told the soldiers. So he had the soldiers pull back and run toward him and really whip him, good. And he said that whip wrapped around the pole and then hit his flesh and tore out like a 15-inch gash in his body. And he said the pain was so severe that he fell to his knees. Can you imagine what it was like for Christians who believe in Jesus, what it was like to have to go through lash, hit, pain, that continuous pain of being hit with a rip that really ripped out your flesh every time it hit you. Just amazing every time I think about it. So anyway, so again, an example of pain. He said when he was carrying the cross up the hill, he was carrying the cross. He said, I looked blue. But he said that was not Hollywood paint. Not only was he dealing with a dislocated shoulder, he was also dealing with pneumonia. Have you ever had pneumonia? That's a painful disease where your chest hurts and it's difficult to breathe. And so in that condition, he was walking up the cross, and he said he was walking the cross up the hill. And he said he heard a voice say to him, you're going to die. And his response is, oh, good. Because if I die, doing this movie, I know I'm going to heaven. So not the kind of response this evil voice was expecting. But anyway, so he walked up the hill in the movie. And if you remember the movie, when they tied him to the cross, they showed him on the cross, and the cross fell forward. Do you remember that? And when it fell forward, it was with a thump, and his shoulder dislocated in pain. And then after they did what they did when he was in that condition, then they showed the cross being turned over, and where he fell back on his back. Bam! Shoulder dislocated in pain. And then if you remember, after all of that movement, now they're lifting the cross, in the movie, and they are lifting it so that it falls into a hole. Bam! Shoulder in serious pain. And he said while he was on the cross, this is like the last scene of the movie, he said it was windy. And every time the cross would move, because it would move in the wind, again, pain in his shoulder. And he looked so bad on the cross that there was a doctor on the scene who became very concerned about his welfare. And so the doctor came over and checked his heart and said, Mel, you could die. Your health is in serious condition. And Mel Gibson asked him, he said, what do you want to do? And his response was, this is between me and God. So no, I want to continue and finish out this scene. Commitment. And while it was there, he heard the voice of God. For Christians, we believe that it is possible for you to communicate with God. And he said, Jim, how far are you willing to go to show me, to have people see me through this scene? And Jim's response was, all of it. I want to go as far as necessary. And then he heard God says, then get ready. So it was almost an indication that things are about to get worse. So here he is on the cross, and he said all of a sudden he heard this gasp in the crowd. Now he says, now I'm like in the, like you're in a tornado in the middle of a storm. I'm not seeing what they're seeing, because I'm in a quiet eye of the storm. He said, this is what they saw. He had gotten hit by lightning while he was on the cross in the movie. And what people saw was him being completely illuminated and fire on both sides of his head. And the people who saw him, Christians and non-Christians both, fell to their knees when they saw that. Now, what he saw was his body leaving, his spirit leaving his body. He saw himself looking at himself on the cross. So if that happens, you really literally did die at that moment, wouldn't you say? And then obviously at some point his spirit entered back into his physical body. But that was the last scene on the, with the cross. And then when that scene was finished, they literally carried him away instantly to the hospital, and he had open heart surgery. So that to me is the best example, and good, since it's Resurrection week, Easter is just right around the corner, so I couldn't think of a better example anyway. But that is a commitment that regardless of what this may cost me, in terms of my family, regardless of what this might cost me in terms of my career, because I believe this is a destiny piece. I believe that this is between me and God. He's called me to do this. Therefore, I'm going to do this, regardless of what I feel in my physical body. Regardless, that is whatever it takes kind of mentality, even if it costs me my life. Now, tell me, if you have that kind of commitment to accomplish any goal, you tell me if it's possible for you to fail. Absolutely not. Now, you may not ever have to deal with being hit by lightning. I hope that, don't want that to happen to you. You may not ever have to go through the level of sacrifice that he had to go through. But if you think that you're going to be able to accomplish any task without having to deal with challenges, then you're mistaken. But if you have that whatever it takes kind of mentality there, especially if you know this is a destiny piece for you, this is kind of a call for you, this is what you've been placed here on earth to accomplish kind of goal, then with that kind of commitment, if you push and persevere, there is no stopping you, and there is no way that you can do anything else but succeed. That is the kind of commitment that I'm asking from you. That is the kind of decision you need to make if you want to accomplish anything big, especially goals that can have a multi-generational effect. That is what I'm requesting of you. So I want you to look at your goals again, and to look at it and be honest with yourself. Have you made that kind of whatever it takes kind of decision? Because if you've done that, then success is guaranteed almost. And you're going to be at the top. And I celebrate it now. We'll be there together. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. So again, my goal is to always share something with you inspirational and something that's informational. And I hope that you see that this did both of those. Make a solid decision and a commitment to do whatever it takes to succeed. And my everything within me prays that you will do that today. Okay? So until next time, be blessed.